Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Rena Brio. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Development for the City of Santa Clara. Just want to welcome you all to some outreach meeting, I should say, on our update to the city's outreach policy for planning applications. And so, I introduced myself. If people feel comfortable, it'd be wonderful if people could introduce who they are. So we know who all is in the room, and maybe a little bit about, like, if you're a resident, if you've been involved in applications in the past, just a little bit about why you're interested in participating. Mark, I will maybe introduce you and say, could you introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Thank you. I'm Mark Kelsey, lived in Santa Clara for many years. And I'm a member of the Old Quad Residents Association, interested in the kind of development that's going on, particularly in the Old Quad, but of course throughout Santa Clara. And I'm interested in this subject in particular because I'm often like, do I know about the upcoming meetings? How do I know? How can I be sure I know? So this is helpful. I'm interested to see what we're doing. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, no, perfect moment to ask for change or give feedback, I guess. Alex, would you be able to introduce yourself?
Hey, Mark. I know the other folks, so I'm specifically saying hey to you and the great neighborhood association and neighborhood you live in. I'm Alex with Catalyze SV. We care very deeply about, oh, hey, Michael. We care really deeply about creating good community engagement policies so that the city of Santa Clara has a really inclusive and collaborative and transparent process. So we've been talking with Rena and the city for a while about this policy, and joined, looks like, by my colleague Shalini as well.
Shalini, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Shalini Gupta. I work as Catalyze SV as a technical program manager, and I'm working on building technology for community engagement. So I'm really interested in seeing what Santa Clara City's community engagement policies are looking for. And hopefully I can catch that into technology.
Great, thank you. Allie?
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for holding this meeting, Rena. For me personally, I'm just curious and interested to learn more about city policies, and I'm just happy to learn more about the subject. So yeah, thank you for your time.
Great, thanks for joining us. So a little bit about tonight. I have a presentation put together. Sorry, my husband is asking me a question with a notepad here, so let me just give him a second of time. Otherwise, something might be burning down in my house. Hold on.
Hey, Allie, good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Alex. Hey, Shalani. Great to see you both too. How's everything been going?
Really well. Yeah, we're excited to weigh in on this policy. As you can imagine, we had lots of thoughts. So we sent a letter to Rena with some requested changes and additions. And so we'll see where that goes.
Awesome. Well, happy to be part of the discussion and excited to learn more.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. So yeah, a little bit about tonight. I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to run through, and it gives a little bit of background about this process, a little bit of background on what our current policy is, and then kind of inserts where we are today, which is in December of 2022, we had similar meetings, but they were more ideation, if you will, about what could we improve about the policy, and gathered ideas and topics of concern. And so really where we're at right now is we've taken that feedback. We've also been utilizing some other best practices and some other realities, which I'm going to get into, and interwoven that into a draft document, which is already posted on the website. So there is something concrete to respond to rather than tell us what you think. We have specific things out there. So you can give more explicit feedback, if you will. So, and then of course, you know, it would be helpful in a way to go through this whole presentation because I think that you might get some answers as I'm going through it. And then you can ask questions. So if you want to jot something down so that we can go back to it, I don't want you to lose your train of thought, but it just, some of these questions might get answered and be more efficient if I just go through the presentation, if that helps. So I am going to share my screen right now. I don't think you guys are seeing them. Screen. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Cool. Great. All right. Of course, it is not working. There we go. Okay. So the city has had an outreach policy for planning applications since 2017, when the policy was originally adopted. And, you know, the general concept of this is really an opportunity to share information and get input from community members on development proposals, which would provide applicants areas for improvement, as well as really informs the city decision makers on the community concerns with, you know, the intention of improving the project, making it better, or really, you know, sending up the red flags if there's something very concerning that, you know, maybe something needs to change fundamentally with what's being proposed. And we started getting information or input on this process of updating the policy in December. And so, you know, why are we changing this? Since 2017, if you really think about it, that's just a period of 5 years, but there's a lot that's happened in that short period of time. So one, we have things that we've learned from. So we've had meetings that occur, and this is really based on feedback that we've garnered from the project, the feedback that we've received. We've heard that meetings are occurring too late in the process and that people feel that projects are already baked by the time they hear them. We've heard that there's ongoing communication that's missing. So the community doesn't really understand what happens with the feedback when they give it. And then if a project evolves or changes, they don't necessarily feel like they're in the loop about those changes. And then I think there's a lack of clarity about when and why a community member could ask for more from a development. Like, you know, hey, I want a park here, or hey, I want a community room here, or hey, I want, you know, just a different color on the paint. When and why can change be effectuated in a project based on input from the community. So another thing that's been very different in recent times is the state of California has passed housing laws. And those housing laws, I think many of you are probably looped into development and current practices in the state. But really, those housing laws have limited in many ways cities' abilities to have discretion on housing in many contexts, not in all contexts, but in many, many contexts. And then really with the pandemic, there's been an increased practice of remote meetings. And that opens up the question, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Do we want more of this? Do we actually want to stop this practice? And I am just going to stop sharing for a second. Are you guys okay? Because when I share my screen, I'm not able to see anyone's face. So I just want to make sure you guys you're with me. Okay, cool. Let me get that back up on the screen. Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Shalini, for the thumbs up. See some head nods. Okay, so today we also have more awareness about how practices haven't resulted in the best of outcomes, and really more about equity, that there are definitely members of our community that are harder to reach because our system is not set up to reach them. And, I think that the way that we currently approach getting information to people is about treating everybody the same. Like, we're going to do a mailing notice for everybody. The way we reach out to this citizen is going to be the same way we reach out to that citizen. And the challenge with that is that we are not actually reaching some of those people because they're just not connected to the channels that other people in our community are connected to. And so it's really about recognizing that we do have to treat people differently if we do want ultimately the equitable outcome in which everyone feels like they can participate and provide input. Okay, so our current policy is a document of like 2 or 3 pages, and it really boils down to this chart here, where we have activities that we do. We have on-site posting where the project description of a project is posted on the site, and information is put up on our website. When there's a community meeting, and if there's a community meeting, there's a mailing radius where people receive notification. We have social media that applies sometimes. We also maintain an email list sometimes. And really, we size that up literally. We size up the size of the sign, we size up the mailing radius. But based on really how we define projects as small or standard, meaning 30 to 49 units, or 30 to 50,000 square feet of commercial or industrial space, large, or of significant interest. So that could be people around the whole entire city that are interested in something. So that's what our table is like today. And then, as you can see, we're not really proposing to change much in this world around public hearings and how we communicate those, partially because a lot of that is actually like legal requirements. So, being held up in a court of law, did someone actually get a physical notice? So that stuff isn't really being proposed, but I do want you to know that the current policy does also talk about the radius of mailed notices, and us using social media and a newspaper notice, for instance. And newspaper notices are almost always provided when they're required per like a law. I think we may recognize that not everybody is going to catch, an item going to hearing because it wasn't a newspaper notice, not as efficient as maybe some of the other processes that we use to get to people. So our current outreach approach is really one size fits all. Not in the literal sense, because as I mentioned, we do increase mailing radiuses based on the size of the project, but really the process, how many meetings we have, when we do our meetings, what we talk about at the meetings. Those are things that, you could be talking about a standard project, you could talk about a controversial project, and really the approach, the process is the same. But what we know is that really, that's not really going to get that's not always going to be effective. And really looking at this outreach policy, trying to find the best practices that we can integrate, right? The Institute of Local Government, Institute of City Managers Association, the American Planning Association, other colleagues who are in this field have really more of a hierarchy for getting to the purpose of community participation and trying to understand what is the purpose for why we are engaging with people. Is it to inform? Is it to consult? Is it to collaborate? Is it to empower? That obviously being a spectrum. And I would say today, our current policy is more in the lines of consult. where we give people information about what's proposed and we ask them for some feedback, right? Do you like this? Do you not like that? And so that's not good, that's not bad, but it is kind of important to realize that people might be coming to a meeting because they want to have their hands more in something. And that's not really how our process has been set up. It's been more set up to be about, we give you something, you give us something back in return. Now, I do want to say that the city does definitely have some empowerment in processes, mostly when we do long range planning. For instance, I can think of our downtown precise plan, for instance, where the community is sitting at the table. We have a downtown community task force, and they are providing recommendations to the decision makers directly about whether or not, you know, a particular area, how a particular area should be developed. So we tend to definitely have community members who sit in those roles as active participants in shaping and developing a program, more on the long range planning, specific plans, also sometimes with policy development, but definitely when we're talking about planning applications more, this is more of where we're at these days. So that begs the question, you know, why do we consult with the public or connect with the public? Is it really to always consult? And really, that answer isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. That answer really depends on the proposal. So today, there are times when the city actually has no discretion on a proposal. You know, someone's proposing a housing project, and based on all these housing laws, there are things that the city doesn't have a yes, no, and I'm sorry, they don't have the ability to say, hey, we actually want you to change X, Y, and Z because it conforms to the standards that we have. So in those instances, it has been awkward when we have community meetings and people are expecting more change from the input that they're providing. So in those instances where the city doesn't have discretion on a proposal, really the city is connecting with the public because we really want to inform people about the project. We want to share that a project's happening. We want them to know what are the standards that are being used. And also, it is good for them to amplify any concerns they have to see if those issues can be resolved. But the main purpose here isn't to say, hey, community, you know, tabula rasa here. What do you think of this proposal? Because legally, the city isn't able to do that. So there is definitely a different purpose for why we're connecting on that proposal. Now, when a project adheres to the city's general plan, but the city actually does have discretion on the project, this is almost everything other than housing, then really why the city is engaging with the community is because we want to receive input on everything that's being proposed. We want to resolve issues, and we can actually make those changes happen or work with the developer to make those changes happen. A lot of it can be about function. It can also be about aesthetics. It can be about things that we have standards on. It can be about things we don't have standards on. But fundamentally, the city has a lot more ability to kind of get change from what they're hearing about, you know. So there is a different purpose there. And I would say that that is more about outreaching to the community, getting some participation from them. It's different than just notifying the community. Now, when a project is proposing to amend the city's general plan, specific to something that is a residential use, so you're having a change to the city's general plan. And for those of you who may not know, the city's general plan is really the blueprint for what is guiding the future of the city. So if somebody wants to redevelop a property, we always look at what the general plan designation is. And if that lines up with what someone's proposing, they actually have a lot of legal abilities to execute some version of that project. Now, if they don't have general plan conformance and they're proposing to amend the general plan, the city has the most amount of discretion. We can say, we don't think that's a good idea. even on the general premise of what you're proposing. If you have an industrial building and you're proposing to convert it to residential, and I'm sorry, not industrial building, an industrial designation, and you want to convert it to residential, the city can absolutely say this is not the right use here for XYZ reasons. You can actually talk about land use as being compatible or not compatible. And with that, it could also say, hey, we want you to change the height. Hey, we want you to change the colors. There's a lot more discretion around the general plan and amending the general plan. And in those areas, we actually have the ability to get more feedback from the public. And it can be about things that don't directly relate to the form and function of the project, but maybe about what the project's contributing to the greater community. For instance, this is where we could say, hey, we actually would like a community room here. If we're going to entertain switching from an industrial use to a residential use, we think that that's going to add another burden in our community. And we really do want, a benefit to the larger community about more open space. These are kinds of community benefits that certainly the community can provide input on. And here there is an ability for a project based on the city's, decision making to say, no, we want more from you here. So if you can tell, right, trying to differentiate here that it's not a one size fits all approach. It's not just about outreach, but rather we want to adapt this outreach policy to be a notification, outreach, and engagement policy to provide more transparency on the purpose for the engagement. And then that would inform how the community is expecting to solicit change, elicit change on something. So all those activities that I mentioned before, the on-site posting, the website posting, the ongoing communication, the dependent size of the project, the use of social media and community meetings, those activities will still continue. I do want to emphasize ongoing communication is new. Based on the feedback that we heard, we really want to set the expectation with the community that they are going to find out more details about a project and be connected to the project. I'm going to get into that a little more. And once again, drilling down to the purpose of these different reasons for why we're engaging. Are we notifying someone? Are we trying to get some feedback to improve a project? Are we asking for all of that? Plus, we want to know if they think there are community benefits that could be included. Or really, is this land use even the right kind of land use? So with that, want to acknowledge that with general plan amendments, specifically that proposed conversion to residential uses, that we've put into this policy document the requirement that the applicant submit a preliminary application. And the reason for that is really to target this issue that people feel that a project's already baked by the time they see it. And there's a lot of good reasons for why it feels baked. When we have an application, when you submit an application with the city, you have to invest in an architect, you have to invest in a civil engineer, you are doing a ton of due diligence, and all of that has to come together for a worthy enough application for the city to even accept. So you're throwing in a lot of money to just make it an acceptable application. Now, a preliminary application is different than a formal standard application. A preliminary application asks for a lot less information, but it's something to work with so that we can have a high level understanding of what's being proposed that allows people to respond to the application without all the level of investment that's going to get that project to essentially being baked. So there would be a requirement to submit a preliminary application for the applicant, and that there would be a visioning community meeting that's held in that stage of the preliminary application so that the community can really provide feedback on these basic things like, this is actually not a good land use here, or hey, we actually want you to consider, a community room or whatever other community benefit could be included. So there's more details that I'll get into in a second, but you'll see that we've added ongoing communication as a requirement. And then we've added this visioning community meeting, which will be required specifically for general plan amendments. And this is a minor point, but in Santa Clara, really all of the meeting, any project that fits under the definition of standard, which is really, we assume we're going to do a community meeting. So we just got rid of the may required part. We always operate where we will have a community meeting. So we just want to be really clear about that. So this is trying to get at how do we get more people to the table who we've been excluding, and really trying to foster inclusive participation by increasing language access. So what we are going to do, because ideally it would be fabulous if we had interpreters at every meeting, but it's very hard to plan for that without, obviously being super resource intensive and, being efficient about it. So all of the notification information that we're going to send out on city planning will provide alternate language information really on a landing page, where then people will be navigated on how to utilize the tools like Google Translate to get to the project page, as well as on how to actually connect with us if they need language support other than English for, a community meeting, for just explaining the application or the proposal, they need a translator at the hearing, all those things. But trying to find a way, and we do know some of the top languages in our city where language support is needed, but Google Translate has actually been a wonderful tool. It does have its own technology limitations, but it's certainly much better than what we've had in the past, where you can, if you have, a language that's not as common, you still probably can find it in Google Translate and connect to the basic translation of information on how to connect with us on getting that support. I do want to also say that this page that we're creating is going to kind of explain the city planning process at a 101 level. Like, I know a lot of people say that we use terminology that can be confusing. And so this is going to be a very simplified explanation of city planning and how people can connect to the information that they're seeking. Also, this is something new. So social media definitely provides opportunities for the city to target people in the community who have other language preferences. And so there are targeting tools, and usually they can be at a cost, but the city can certainly directly target people who have harder access, that we can look to a non-English speaking community member and go to the resources or the pages they follow, for instance. And there's a way to do that from a geographical sense as well. So proposed changes, and this is virtual meetings. So community meetings, so right now, the policy is silent. We started during the pandemic making all the meetings virtual because of necessity. We just had to do it. But now we're at a point to pause and think, is this a good thing? Do we want to switch course? And a lot of the feedback I've heard, and it's not all of the feedback, I actually did get some unique feedback at the last meeting we just had a couple of days ago. But a lot of the feedback was people really like having virtual meetings. It is actually a tool to increase participation. People who would have been interested in something, but they couldn't get across town, now can participate in things that aren't in their immediate neighborhood. So I think by and large, virtual meetings are a good thing, and they're things that people want to stay. Now, in-person or hybrid meetings, and this is what's in our draft policy now. So it's sort of assumed that community meetings are going to start out as virtual. However, in-person or hybrid meetings may be required at the director's discretion, depending on the project complexity, controversy, or level of discretion. And what I do have to say is that Once again, we're talking about planning applications. There are processes for long-range planning that we actually have task forces that become Brown Act bodies, which really means that they have to have certain requirements about how they hold meetings. And those meetings will be hybrid, meaning they'll be recorded, available for people to come in person, as well as participate virtually. And then we've also have, with virtual or hybrid meetings, we can record those meetings and then we can post them on the website so that if people can't attend, we're able to put them up for people to view later. Now, I did want to share, we actually had a gentleman at our last meeting talk about how for the senior community, hybrid meetings are really important because there's still a level of discomfort around the technology for virtual meetings. And so that that thought was definitely shared. And just what I'm doing with that piece of information, actually talking to people at different parts of the city who there are logistics related to having hybrid meetings. There's certain technology that's needed, as well as hours and locations for and staffing outside of community development. Our department certainly would support hybrid meetings. It's more that other departments and other people with like AV support and whatnot, and making rooms available for that purpose, because the quality, and I would say that sometimes I think many people will say that hybrid meetings can be a lower quality meeting when you participate remotely, because you're really, today the technology is like you're zooming in on a meeting. You're zooming in. I mean, there's a camera looking in at the room. And so it's hard to differentiate who exactly is talking in the room. Now, when we have hybrid meetings are really resourced, which I don't think we can do in this instance, like at our city council meetings, the camera will actually zoom in on the person who's speaking. And until the technology catches up there, or we get more resources, that's just not how hybrid meetings would be executed. A hybrid meeting would be just a camera in the room so that people can, first of all, be in the room. That's what hybrid is. But then people who are participating remotely get a bird's eye into the room and can participate. But once again, I am looking at some of those logistical challenges and whether or not they can be overcome in order to support more hybrid meetings. But obviously here today, wanting to hear everyone's feedback on that too. Ongoing communication. So we have more specific language, setting those expectations in the policy that the city is going to maintain an email notification list, and that those on the list are going to be set recordings, are going to be set materials. And then any changes to the project, they're also going to be notified about. And any of really information, we're going to have another community meeting, we're going to have another hearing, or we're going to have a hearing. Those individuals would also be notified on that. So this is a rather small thing, but on-site posting. So when people post a sign on the site, that's pretty stale. Some of these applications can take a year to go through a process and maybe be revised after rounds of feedback, either from the city or the community. But what the rendering shows, that even the project description can be stale and not relevant. So we're going to implement QR codes so that the public can really just get an immediate link really to the website, so that they can see the real-time plans, the real-time project description, so that it's hard to change out signs like frequently, but we certainly can give people the tool for how they can go and get the most recent information with a click of their phone. So with that is, oh, wait, hold on. I might as well share with you the next. Yeah, no, let me just stop here. I was just gonna say what the next steps are really, but let me stop that here. I'm gonna pause. I did a lot of talking, so I'm happy right now to do a lot of listening. And I can move to different points of the PowerPoint, or if there are things that weren't covered that you'd like to talk about or provide feedback on, open to. But who would like to start? Any questions or comments in general?
Can I start?
Yeah, sure, Shalini.
I was wondering, is there any technology being built for community engagement or gathering community feedback? If you can share something about, technology aspect of community engagement with Santa Clara City is,
Yeah.
pursuing.
So a couple things on that. One, we have we've been we've had a lot of success with surveys, but those tend to be on the policy end. We've had for our housing element, boy, I wish I knew, like thousands of people respond to our survey. And for a city the size of Santa Clara, that's like actually statistically significant feedback. So we've had surveys that we've put out, and we've been able to then also check the metrics, because once again, we're not reaching everyone in an equal way. For instance, we get more with our housing element. We had a lot more housing owners participate than renters, even though we have more renters who live in the city than owners. So, it's more, you throw something out to someone, but some people are going to participate. Other people you need to reach in another way. But we have had a lot of success with just general numbers of participations in surveys, more for policies. We've been using a tool, which we have on our website now, called Conveo, and it allows people, we've used it for a zoning code update, we've used it for our housing element. We have it now for this outreach policy, but what it does is allows people to just go into the document, put their comments in, and so everyone can see comments. And that's been kind of handy for us too. So that's been a good, new tool. I have also seen, really with meetings, there's been a spectrum of how people use tools with Zoom to survey people who are participating, to kind of drill down on, like, first of all, to make sure everyone, you might be sitting in a meeting and you just don't feel comfortable speaking up, but you're happy to like put in your vote, right? So I've seen those kinds of tools also utilized in community meetings. And I think you just need to be careful about that, because it can be overly simplistic too, so it's just, someone has to carefully craft that. But I would say those are the tools. I quite frankly get emails from various different marketing companies like all the time on different tools that could be utilized around technology. So if there are particular tools, and specifically that people think are really helpful, that would be really good for me to know. I think we are really open to explore technology and all the ways that it could be helpful for us. It's just, there's a lot on the market, and it's really hard to differentiate these different products, specifically for Santa Clara.
Question related to that. So when you gather these feedback from surveys, is it being shown back to the community?
Yes.
Is there a place where, if you can point it in the chat or somewhere, I would love to see, how it's shown back, because that's when we build the trust, right?
Right. And I think, there's definitely some maybe improvement that could happen there. We usually take that feedback and we relay it back to the decision makers, right? In staff reports. The community doesn't necessarily always, it's always a public document, right? But the public isn't always going in proactively to read a staff report so that they can know how many people said that they wanted this or that. So it is still publicly accessible, but it's not necessarily, hey, everyone, you participate in the survey, here are the results. And I think that's a pretty simple thing that we could do, but I'm not certain that that happens. My gut is that it's actually not happening.
I mean, I'm surprised, because that's what I've learned from my just a little experience. The community want to see, if they have spoken, they want to see that it's somewhere,
Yeah.
maybe on a graph or, on a website, or they can see their comments. So be interesting.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, Mark.
Rena, I really, I think I like all the things you proposed of maybe some comments and a couple of questions. One thing that strikes me particularly very valuable will be the early look at a project, the visioning meeting that you talked about. I do think that is a concern that by the time you see a community meeting up recently, it's pretty well put together. And so a visioning meeting, I can see there's a parcel I understand that may be up for development along Park Avenue, and it would be great before we get too far down the road on that. I'm just using that as an
Yeah,
example.
yeah.
But that would be very, very helpful to have that. So I think that's really helpful. I think the ongoing communication is also extremely important. And now I'm envisioning it, I don't know if this is the way that you're thinking about it, that let's say a hearing occurs, that after that hearing, maybe if you weren't able to be there or after a decision has been made, you'd get an email saying, here's what happened. The planning commission met and recommended approval of this project with the following conditions. And now it's going to go to city council, and that's scheduled for, I mean, that would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, no, that's actually not what I was thinking. But I can see why that's actually an important, it's more along the whole process, getting you to a
Yes.
hearing. But you're
Yes.
saying like, even that first action, right? Then,
Yeah, I mean,
Still part of the
like
process.
every time there's an action, maybe there
Yeah.
could be a short summary that says, here's what was decided, and here's the next step. And if you
Yeah.
want more information, look at the project page or whatever.
yeah,
Right, so.
yeah, no, that's great. Because sometimes a project can go to multiple hearing bodies, right?
Right,
Before an
right,
ultimate, decision.
right. And then, I think notification, I liked it. I'm interested, a lot of times the projects we're interested in our neighborhood are the small projects. And so those, you have to make sure you walk around the neighborhood and look at the telephone poles and see if there's anything posted on the telephone poles. I don't know if there's another way to, I know you said some things will be mailed out in a particular area. I wonder if, and maybe if this already exists, I'm sorry, I don't know about it, but if I could say, maybe by council district or by
Yeah.
some other designated neighborhood, I could say, send me an email when there's, I want to be on the email list for any projects that occur in this
Yeah.
specific geographic area.
You know what? Actually, Mark, so we have that for when people care about the whole city, or
Yeah,
they care about one project, but we don't have it geographic. And I think that's a really good suggestion. We could easily implement that. The only thing is it would be building out. We don't proactively put people on lists. So it would be
Right.
creating the opportunity for someone to select themselves into an
Yeah.
area. But I just say that because we do have a lot of people already on a list, and they would have to somehow know, oh, there's a new list just for,
yeah,
because right now they're getting stuff, and you might be one of them, for everything in the city. You can be part of that mailing group, or,
yeah.
any
I
individual projects. So,
I
yeah,
think you're right. Not everybody wants to sign up for the whole city.
right.
But you do
Yeah.
want to particularly know about what's happening in the neighborhood around you.
Yeah, but definitely, but we could filter that out by council district so people can proactively choose council district.
And when would this, do you have a proposed implementation?
Yeah,
line?
it's in my last slide, but
Oh, okay.
no,
Sorry.
it's okay. It's super simple. So really taking feedback, going back, revising the document, and going to the planning commission
Mhm.
pretty soon. I'd like to honestly get this to them probably in the August or September timeframe.
Great.
And then hopefully go to council in the November, December timeframe. So we just, this isn't like blowing up this whole process, right? We're
Right.
we're updating something, and we are trying to look at it from a more contemporary lens. So I feel like hopefully we don't have to spend too much more time, so that we can get really this all going pretty soon.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to learn more about it and
Yeah.
provide some comment.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Hi, Allie.
Hi, Rena. First of all, thank you so much for putting all this together. This is super informative and really well done. And being a former staffer at the city of San Jose, fully recognize that this is no small feat. So thank you so much for taking the time to put this together for us. I did have a quick question that does piggyback off of Mark's a little bit. I was curious regarding the timeline and the implementation. And an additional question that I had is, I was curious about, for lack of a better term, maybe any potential like retroactive aspects to this policy. Yeah, was just curious about that. Thank you.
Yeah, so usually when we establish policy, it gets applied for people when they submit applications. It's especially for a policy like this, which is really about setting the stage early on for how to do that. It's very hard to then go and say, oh, you did a community meeting this way. Now you're going to have to do it this way. So I definitely think it's going to be from when the council adopts this update. From that point forward, any applications that are submitted would follow the policy as prescribed. And really the process for this policy is it would go to the Planning Commission for their recommendation to the City Council, who would be the decision makers.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And Allie, your name, oh, is Allie, you're still there. Your name
Yes.
seems familiar to me. Have we worked together before?
We very well might have. I actually just, as soon as I saw your name, I realized that I just added you on LinkedIn within the past couple of days.
Oh, okay.
So, great to meet
Maybe-
another
maybe-
LinkedIn connection.
Yeah, maybe that's why I know your name too. So, small world.
Maybe. I use the same picture for Zoom as LinkedIn, so that very well
Okay,
could be it
okay.
too.
Alex, I know Catalyze SB, and for everyone's awareness, they did send me a letter on many different specific aspects for comment. But Alex, is there anything specifically you wanted to raise or talk about?
I mean, there's always things I could say. I just, I appreciated at the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned folks in the community wanting to hear earlier about the projects. That, as I recall, was a big piece of feedback that we shared with you and your colleagues in our community engagement committee meeting a couple years ago. I loved Mark's point about transparency and being able to understand things. Obviously, my colleague Shalini's points about using technology to make it easier to track the development. And Santa Clara has a great website for that, that frankly speaking, Allie supersedes, I think, San Jose and what it does. So I find it's pretty easy to navigate the Santa Clara website looking for information on projects. But obviously, there are aspects of the policy, and we just ask that, you can provide us feedback on the feedback we've given, and just to manage expectations, we may have sort of an action alert to our members saying, hey, here's the policy, it's coming up for a vote in August or September. Here are things we like about the policy. Here's the feedback we've given to the city. Here's how it's responded to the feedback, or here's how it hasn't. Here's where we'd still like to see the policy go. So, we want to continue to push for the best possible policy.
Great, and thanks for being engaged. And also making sure that this continues to move forward. So thank you for that.
Thanks for advancing it.
Okay, so with that, I do think I could put up this slide, which is just what we all talked about. Yeah, and it has my contact information, which could be good for anyone who this recording gets posted and shared with. So the meeting materials are going to be posted online. Right now, you can go and see the updated draft policy. Really asking for comments to go into that document by July 21st. You can put it into the Conveo. If for some reason that doesn't work for you, or the technology is failing you, or that's just not how you want to share your comments, you can certainly contact me directly via email. We are going to enter into recommendation by the Planning Commission either in August or September timeframe, and then to City Council for their, consideration of approval in the October or November timeframe. So just want to thank you all for taking time. And if there are other people that you think would want to weigh in on something, if you could ping them so that they could do it rather soon, just so can keep this process moving and get something better in place than what we have today.
Thank you very much, Rena.
Yeah, thank you.
And we
All
have
right.
been doing that, Rena, try to get the word out. Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you
Rena.
for your time, Rena.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Ellie. All right. Have a good evening, everyone.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
rest of your night. Bye-bye.
Bye.